proud Assyrian Americans, citizens of America. And we believe that our responsibility is to be citizens that give back to the United States. At the same time, we also believe that we need to work and help ancient Assyria, which is now modern-day Iraq. Good evening. My name is Anakin Varani, and I am your MC for this evening. I'd like to start with welcoming each and every one of you. I know everyone's busy and has a lot to do. On behalf of our chairperson of the board, Asher Yosef, who sadly could not be with us, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to tonight's evening. The Assyrian Aid Society of America began this evening, the first of many, hopefully, events in DC, in an event called Eyes on Assyria. Tonight, you will hear from a few of our members and have some insight as to what we do as an organization in the United States, where we help Assyrians across the country, across the world, the globe, in Iraq mostly. I would like to begin with welcoming my better half, my husband, the president of Assyrian Aid Society of America, Dr. Antoine Varani.
Dear organization leaders and friends, good evening. On behalf of Assyrian Aid Society of America, I would like to thank you for taking the time to join us for a fun, memorable, and fruitful evening. At this time, I would like to ask all the Assyrian Aid Society volunteers to please come here to the podium so I can thank all of you. Mariam? We're going to start with Juliana Khamouche. She's from LA chapter and one of the key players in organizing this event. Juliana. Ninebra Varani is the secretary for Central Valley chapter, my daughter. Anakin Varani is the Central Valley chapter president and the MC for this evening. Mariam Ishaya, right there from New York. Sarah Bennett, she just went downstairs to make sure there are no people lost. Ramson Tuma, where's DC president and another key player in organizing this event. Thank you. Dr. Gilliana, is she here?
No.
Sarah's going to find her.
She's lost. We're going to find her. She's the VP for DC chapter. The one and only Sergon Shabas. He's our director and treasurer and someone we look up to every day. Thank you, Sergon. Josephine Atisha. She's the director for Michigan chapter, as well as she writes grants for Assyrian Aid Society. Thank you. And I saved the best for last, Carmela Borashan. She's the outreach director and the person responsible for this evening. Thank you, Carmela. You may be seated. All these volunteers operate and volunteer out of 7 chapters: Santa Clara, California; Los Angeles, California; Central Valley, California; Arizona; Chicago; Michigan; and DC. And hopefully soon, New York. So if you are from any of these areas and you want to volunteer, please let us know. We also have an artistic branch that is mainly operating out of Santa Clara, California. It's Mesopotamia Night, and advocacy branch led by Carmela Borashan. Assyrian Aid Society was established 30 years ago in response to a large displacement of Assyrians and other Christians during the Gulf War in 1991. It was believed by its founders that this organization would be a temporary establishment and would soon close once the war was over. Over 30 years later, Assyrian Aid Society is still here, and unfortunately, the needs are greater than ever. Over the past 3 decades and over $16 million later, Assyrian Aid Society has been able to open and maintain Assyrian-based schools throughout the northern Iraq, 26 schools to be exact, something that has never been done anywhere or anytime. These schools teach all their curriculum in Assyrian language. Assyrian Aid Society was and is responsible for the cost of translating these books in Assyrian, lecturers who assist the teachers, and their transportation. Assyrian Aid Society has covered the expenses to repair homes damaged by various conflicts in the region, irrigation channels to assist with sustainability, building homes to prevent land grabbing, street lighting for safety, pharmacies and mobile clinics to aid the sick and vulnerable, building camps for IDPs during ISIS, first aid, food, and care packages year after year, especially during the pandemic. As you can see, Assyrian Aid Society has taken the heavy load and responsibility to aid in many different fields and areas. And that's why it is the most recognized humanitarian organization among Assyrians and non-Assyrians. This organization was nominated for Nobel Peace Prize in 2016 and was recognized by Iraqi government as the top humanitarian organization in the country in 2020 for its heavy involvement in aiding the sick and in need. But what's next? When will we stop practicing the very definition of insanity? What do I mean by that? We build, they destroy. We heal, they injure. We fight for our lands, and yet they are still illegally taken over. How long will we repeat the same thing and expect a different result? Assyrian Aid Society has been leading the humanitarian effort for Assyrians and non-Assyrians, and it is time to build a strong alliance with other NGOs and organizations to make a permanent solution to our problems, and it starts with security and economic sustainability. Events and evenings like this are critical so that all NGOs, religious and non-religious organizations, get to know Assyrian Aid Society and its valuable aid that it has offered to Assyrians and non-Assyrians, that includes all the Christians, Yazidis, Arabs, and Kurds. Why? Because we are a humanitarian organization. Our mobile clinic, for example, will not reject anyone who seeks medical attention. And now, again, I want to thank all of you for being here. It really means a lot to us. We put, especially Carmela, her team, put a lot of effort in organizing this event. So thank you again. It means a lot. And where's Carmela? I'm going to embarrass her because I'm going to keep saying her name. She will explain more on these topics that I covered this evening. Thank you very much.
I would like to invite a very impressive female in the Assyrian community, Dr. Alda Benjamin, who is sorry, let me finish. She's really amazing, and I want everyone to hear this. She is the Avig Malik Bet Yosef Faculty Fellow in Assyrian Histories at the University of California, Berkeley. She will be talking about having a brief summary of her recent book, which is available for purchase tonight. So please welcome, with a big round of applause, Dr. Alda Benjamin.
Shalom Aleichem. ومن قامة لاوتن باسيمة رابط قاسي غدران تشتلا قديتهم زمن أجي من نوخن اللي قارة جورا بهدار توخن أمان رابط قبل طيبوت هالكيم داشو تاسد إلى رابط قربة من لبي وكتشت شولان السوداني يودي أوتن باسيمة. I want to begin with extending my appreciations for the Assyrian East Society and especially Carmela for organizing this event and inviting me to contribute to it with a brief discussion of my book, which is unfortunately not really available for purchase, but there are flyers. I ordered copies, but they did not make it, so I apologize. But you can get flyers on the table with a discount. So I have a copy with me. I can share afterwards. My work as Yabi Malik Bajousa Faculty Fellow, as a historian of modern Middle Eastern studies, explores the role of minorities in 20th century Iraqi cultural history based on in-country research that foregrounds the Iraqi periphery, as well as Aramaic or Assyrian Arabic bilingualism, challenging the monolingual narrative of the state. So Assyrians in Modern Iraq, Negotiating Culture and Political Space was recently published with Cambridge University Press in February of this year. And specifically it examines the relationship between a stronger Iraqi state under the Ba'ath regime, which began in 1968, and the Assyrians. I will not define who they are, I think you know who they are, but I can take questions at the end. I conduct research in Arabic and modern Aramaic or Assyrian and use oral histories and archival documents that I discovered at the Iraqi National Library and Archives in Baghdad, as well as community-based sources retrieved from religious libraries and private collections in Erbil, Duhok, and Mosul. As a historian with interest in Iraq's minorities and particularly the Assyrian community, language is a crucial element in my work. As it weaves through various parts of Assyrian history, connecting its ancient Mesopotamian past to its Syriac Christian heritage, as well as its cultural traditions. Language, in both its oral and written formats, have been valued, preserved, and elevated by all segments of this community throughout the centuries. Thus, in my contribution to this event, I will address briefly 3 points: the socio-political conditions that advanced the multilingual paradigm in the 1960s and 1980s, the resulting hybridized Iraqi sphere, and the importance of accounting for and preserving multilingualism. And of course, the Assyrian Eid Society, and the reason why I'm focusing on this aspect of the book, language, is leading the efforts in preserving and elevating the Assyrian language, the Aramaic language, which is an endangered language, with their schools and other programs that aim to do that, and with the support of diasporic organizations that contribute to these efforts. So briefly, let me begin with concepts of minoritization and pluralism as they relate to my work as I understand them. Minoritization describes a process leading to the creation of minority communities like the Assyrians, whether their original point of departure is taken to be the society of the Ottoman period or that of the nation states of the 20th century. Minoritization has been deeply connected to sectarianism. It appeared and in fact was designated to favor certain communities, but it often had devastating consequences. It thus signifies historical and contemporary practices of discrimination and marginalization, relegating certain communities to an inferior status within the modern hierarchy of citizenship of the nation state. Often the living memory of violence and the trauma that survivors and their descendants experienced was carried with them. My book also engages with the concept of pluralism, rather than adopting a national language that sees these groups as problems or questions. Pluralism celebrates how these communities enrich the cultures of the region and how they preserve languages, notions of homeland, historical memories, and literature in the face of state pressures, displacement, and exile. Within this context, pluralism can be defined as a linguistic, cultural and ideological integration, although temporary, of communities within particular spaces. Its importance resides not only in the degree of its success, it's still important to be accounted for, and I understand sectarianism and the minoritization of the Assyrians to be modern phenomena derived from historical processes. Moreover, as this book reveals, Assyrians, much like Egyptian Copts and Iraqi Jews, did not constitute monolithic, static communities, but shared similarities with others in their places of residence, Iraq in my particular case, and various religious and ethnic communities. They came to be immersed in the public sphere in the second half of the 20th century, contributing to the press and joining political groups. In 1968, the Ba'ath regime came to power in Iraq and began the process of securing hegemony over political groups that it had historically opposed, and making concessions to communities that mostly resided in the north. Kurdish national identity and language were recognized, and cultural and literary rights were extended to the Assyrians and the Turkmens. The role of Assyrians within the oppositional parties necessitated the state's attempt to attract Assyrian political leaders, religious, political, and intellectual, into cooperative arrangements with cultural promises. The Arabic monolingual paradigm that had been advanced throughout the 20th or the previous decades in urban and majority Arabic-speaking Iraqi centers this process had been going on, while the northern region, where the state's power was more limited, retained its multilingual character. The presence of migrant northern Iraqi communities flocking to major urban centers in the second half of the 20th century in search of better employment and educational opportunities increased the visibility of the multilingual nature of the Iraqi state. The urbanization and politicization of these migrants, including the Assyrians, and the numerous intersecting political events at this time allowed for the creation of a space and the need for the reintroduction and recognition of multilingualism. During this time, important literary works were produced in various languages, not only in Arabic, Assyrian included. And the production of works in Assyrian and Aramaic with the modest support of the government contributed to the revival and standardization of the language across the various Eastern Aramaic dialects spoken in Iraq, as well as Iran, Syria, and the growing diaspora. Numerous critical works were produced during this short period, and the formation of significant cultural clubs and organization provided an important cultural venues for the Assyrians to interact, engage, and have discussions. Assyrian intellectuals within these clubs were often successful in subverting the state's narrative by incorporating multiple layers of meaning into their texts. As a result, the 1970s witnessed the rise of a hybridized and multilingual Iraqi cultural sphere, that it was in some sense a continuation of the pre-nationalist era that had traditionally cut across religious discourses. In this asymmetrical contact zone, language, and particularly bilingualism, became the field in which subordinate as well as dominant groups confronted each other. Language thus enabled memories to be rehearsed and expressed in the urban Baghdadi contact zone, where power relations derived from a hierarchy of citizenship marked the engagement of Iraqi intellectuals with each other and with the state. It's important to note here that resistance to the Ba'ath regime and the state took other forms as well. It appears in archival documents that I study and other sources, including a bishop in Mosul trying to curtail advancements by the Baathists in his parish in the early 1970s, and an 18-year-old, Shemu bin Shmuel, lifting the veil from the Simel massacre with a song in 1972. To resistance to Islamic religious education of Christian students in public schools in the late 1970s, and ongoing national and political struggles against the regime. Accounting for multilingualism. The absence of certain communities from discussion, not only scholarly discussion in general, reflects often the lack of training of various personnel, academics in my field, but others in other fields, with the modern languages used by these what became minoritized communities. Displaced communities have limited local archives, and some of these communities are creating alternative archives that allow them to collect and preserve sources relating to their own past. I am directing a project at Berkeley with the support of the Assyrian community, and also collaborating on others in Iraq to help with these efforts. But waves of displacement, starting at the turn of the 20th century, have disrupted our efforts, creating gaps in our records and in the history of this community. The lack of historical scholarship on mostly rural communities, such as the Yazidis and the Assyrians, particularly the Yazidis, a primarily oral culture, have had disruptive results. Both Yazidis and Assyrians have witnessed the destruction of their cultural sites, while the displacement of their populations has disrupted their agricultural way of life and knowledge. Rural traditions that had been preserved orally for generations have slowly begun to disappear. But some scholarship, like my own work on the Assyrians, have found ways to revisit existing sources: the press, poetry collections, works of literature, oral histories, and art, in order to gain new insights into these communities. The recognition that many of these communities were bilingual or multilingual has helped to uncover the interplays between silenced, unofficial language, between language connoting nostalgia, indigenous culture, as against the language of the state. The preservation efforts of the Assyrian Aid Society are to be really celebrated and supported because they're very important. What you do is very important. And I thank you as somebody who studies the history of this community and as a Middle Eastern historian and scholar for helping us fill in the gaps and helping us preserve the language and ensure a very important aspect of the culture continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Next, I would like to invite a dear member of the Assyrian Aid Society, Josephina Tisha, who is a director in the Michigan chapter and also a grant writer, as Antoine recognized earlier. She will be singing for us a hymn of peace. Josephine.
Thank you, Anakin. Okay, so Shalom Alochon. My name is Josephina Tisha. I'm one of the directors of Assyrian Aid Society. And I wanted to share a hymn that I was inspired to sing during my last trip to the homeland. We were driving through the mountains, and I don't know, I'm not even a singer, guys. And I was compelled to just sing this hymn from church, and I wanted to share it with you. So this particular hymn is sung during the rite of peace. So at Mass, the priest administers the rite of peace, where he gives the shlama. So shlama means peace in Aramaic. He gives the shlama to the altar servers, who then pass the sign of peace to the rest of the congregation. So today I would like to extend the same peace among all of you here. And I'm going to say it in Surat, and the translation is in your program, in case you're wondering what I'm saying. Nishaklum tur shlam, shlam el amman, shlam o sheino magor el amman, مشيخة البركان زرول حب بيالتت كل زمروخ شوح الشموخ سند لي كان مشيان الملكة باطل شر من باث دعارة طور كن شب سغدوخ اللو خاني قارب كل الدن زروي كريه بنعمتوخ بعسمريه بحنانوخ بشط الله يدعون ديوخ وكل عني دي ليقه مارن هون لن. Thank you.
Josephine, thank you. Next, I would like to invite the person that is responsible for this evening, the person that had a vision and saw it through and didn't falter and didn't question herself at all and had the strength and belief that tonight was going to happen exactly the way she envisioned it. Carmela Barashan is the Outreach Director of Assyrian Aid Society. She's also an Executive Board Director. She is truly an inspiration for each one of us in the Assyrian Aid Society organization. Carmela, please join us.
Thank you. Shlama. Burkatet aloud kullochon. Welcome our distinguished guests. Thank you for the honor bestowed upon us by your presence at our event. Assyrian nation came to fruition in Mesopotamia more than 6,000 years ago between the two rivers. A nation that created the very first civilization and empire. Mesopotamia, the ancestral land of Abraham. The thriving nation, empire, collapsed more than 2,000 years ago. This nation accepted Jesus as their savior and became the light in the dark world, and as Christians belonged to the house of Christ. They built one of the first organized and disciplined church, a church that originally developed among Assyrians during the 1st century AD in Assyria, Upper Mesopotamia, northwestern Persia, and east of Byzantine Empire. It is an apostolic church established by Apostle Thomas, Apostle Thaddeus, and Apostle Bartholomew. They spread the word, evangelized, preached, and taught the gospel from the Middle East all the way to India and China. They gave more martyrs for their faith than any other Christian nation. They knew Jesus forewarning them on Matthew 24:9. They also did give martyrs for their ethnicity, so to leave their historical lands, historical remnants, and leave behind their rich history for the local powers to claim it. They got slaughtered, forced to conversion, were mass executed, were crucified, raped, young girls were stolen, fathers got killed, and young boys were taken away for their faith or ethnicity. They lived like sheep among wolves, but kept their heads up high, knowing their faith and ethnicity was much stronger. They fought alongside of major powers during Persian Empire, Greek Empire, during World War I and II, but were betrayed multiple times by the power bees, by denying of their rights to have their own land when they were promised of it. After the Persian Gulf War, they faced death threats. Flyers of death threats were placed at their doorsteps. Churches were blown up until ISIS came and, like Nazi, put the letter N on the doors of the Christian households to locate the Nazarenes. Gave them 3 days to convert, leave, or die. They all left knowing full well that they will never denounce their faith or ethnicity. About 2.5 million Assyrians, also known as Chaldeans and Syriacs, lived in their ancestral lands in modern Iraq prior to 2003. Today, and post continuous ethnic cleansing campaigns, only 250,000 remain, even if that. Assyrians are an important fabric to the vibrant mosaic of Iraq. However, they have been marginalized and persecuted. Assyrians are proud and resilient people who wish to remain in their deep-rooted ancestral lands as law-abiding citizens. We, at the Assyrian Aid Society, aim to support their will. This buried history of this nation of 6,000 years was discovered by archaeologists over time. They dug up the archaeological remnants for museums for showcasing. And in 2014, the discoveries were smashed, destroyed, or looted. As these discoveries, remnants of a once thriving nation, were destroyed by ISIS, now the local powers claim the Assyrian heritage as their own. The Assyrian archaeological sites are ignored, threatened by erosion, vandalism, and urban expansion. A nation of so much history, a biblical nation with so much accomplishments, retaining their ethnicity and their Aramaic language through all their tribulation, this nation is facing its ultimate death sentence. They say when justice dies, civilization dies. Now, they are face to face with their annihilation if there is not a strong force behind them. They are struggling to hold on to their ethnicity, their lands, their rights as citizens of Iraq, their ancestral remnants, and their language due to ethnic and cultural cleansing. The rights of Assyrians are routinely ignored by both democratic constitutions of the books in Baghdad and Erbil. In a free and democratic society, all groups are reflected equally in the constitution of the land. The Assyrians lost hope in holding fair elections in Iraq and in the Kurdistan region since 2005, based on the manipulation of votes. The consistent policies and intimidations to eliminate the most vulnerable indigenous people from the region is seen by the massive land grabbing, silencing the vocal activists, lack of support for Assyrian schools, challenges with obtaining permits for their projects or buildings, lack of hiring Assyrians in the governmental positions unless part of the KDP. Obliterating Assyrian history from the history books, limiting farmers' access to their own lands per KRG directives, and so on. The local government is building houses or businesses for non-Assyrians in Assyrian villages without permission from the locals, as dictated in the official documents, in order to slowly dilute them out of the region. The struggle between Baghdad and Erbil has devastating impact on the most vulnerable indigenous minorities in northern Iraq, Assyrians and Yazidis. Turkish airstrikes in the northern Iraq region is another cause for relocation of the Assyrians in the Berber and Nala region. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Assyrian people, with the help of all Assyrian humanitarian organizations that are here in this event, are pulling together to build the infrastructure, create businesses, rebuild the damaged homes and churches, support Assyrian schools, knowing well that all may be destroyed yet again. The only hope they hung on to was their representation in the parliament, which due to unfair election process lost their seats. Assyrians are the indigenous people. The land was and is theirs. They have been there before Iraq even existed, but their challenges are numerous to stay in their ancestral homeland. Journalist and author Jonathan Eric Lewis emphasized that, quote, in Iraq, in which Assyrian rights are not adequately protected, would likely not be the democratic, pluralistic society that is needed in the region. This quote is from The Betrayal of the Powerless, and the book is on the table. A persecuted nation such as Assyrians that never had a chance to recuperate from generations of persecution is divided now. In the oppressive society, when people feel threatened, hide their identity, their thoughts, and feelings. They become divisive, backbiting, seeking self-interests. With all that though, Assyrians have worked very hard and still are to maintain their identity. The local powers play on any possible divisions for their planned policies. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Why Assyrians and other minority rights must be considered. A pluralistic society is the foundation of a democratic and resilient society. A constitution we the people that will prevent the tyranny. Democracy will keep a balanced society and create stability in the most unstable region of the world, and to maintain the diverse mosaic fabric of Iraq's society. Now, one must ponder, what is it that this broken nation to do? Where to go? Who to ask for help and advice? What is the next plan of action for their survival? Remembering our biblical hope, Isaiah 19:23 says, in that day there will be a highway from Egypt and to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt and Egyptians to Assyria. However, what is our responsibility as Assyrians, the oldest nation in the world, and as a household of faith? There is a letter of plea from late Rabbi Asher Ischaria, that the full letter is written there. I'm just going to quote one statement from him, who said, to promote peace in the region and in the world, it is necessary to protect, save, and help the indigenous people to remain and thrive in their homeland, where their ancestors built the civilization in the ancient world. This will only happen if the indigenous people, who are now reduced to minority, ally together. The following are the asks from Assyrian communities from Atra. In summary, establishing Nineveh Plain as a self-governed administrative area linked to the central government. Neutralize Nineveh Plain region from political tensions between central government in Baghdad and KRG. Build one authorized security force that is representative of all components of the Nineveh Plain. Establish an international protection zone in Nineveh Plain region. Encourage and assist economic growth. Protect and ensure Assyrian representation in the parliament. Put an end to all forms of land grab cases and enforce laws to solve these open cases. Alter the education system in the KRG by removing references to all radical materials from textbooks. These must be accomplished before the demographic of the region changes due to expansion of territories by local governments and strongholds on the oil and gas-rich region. Thank you.
It is hard to believe that I've been a fan of our next presenter for over a decade, because if you look at her, you will see a very young, vibrant Assyrian female who's extremely talented and a blessing for us all. But I remember her first performance that I saw, I think it was 2009, and she blew me away and gave me the chills. And even today, as she practiced, she blew me away and gave me the chills. I have the honor of introducing a dear friend of the Assyrian community, and mine in particular, Leah Rose Fisher. She will be singing 2 songs for you tonight. The first is our national anthem, Rum Rama, which was written by the late Rabbi Nebu Isabey. The second is Charabit Nineveh. Please join me in welcoming Leah Rose Fisher.
kishtas lumta bron yebzukta hishkhatara la taqtuqe lela shwakta timun mira khabit naren banach betan hitchandina mechejerme
I want to thank every one of you for being with us tonight. I want to point out a few presentations that we have scattered across the room. Over there on my right, we start with a PowerPoint presentation that is playing that you can look at pictures. Next to it, we have a display of Assyrian books that describe the Assyrian plight. Those books are for you to obtain with a donation that you feel comfortable with to help support our Assyrian writers and Assyrian Aid Society. They were all donated to our organization, and we're very grateful. Next to it, we have a table that has a list of the project list that we have in Assyrian Aid Society. The costs and the impact that they have on our people in our homeland are all written on there. We encourage you to pick one to donate to that touches you, that you believe in. With that, we have decorative artifacts that are displayed. People that choose a project off the list and donate towards it are welcome to pick and choose one of those artifacts. I would like to thank right now two of our very talented photographers in the Assyrian community. One has graced us with his presence. His name is Joe Snell. Please, everybody, give a hand to Joe. Joe has informed us that tonight, if anybody chooses to donate $250 or more to any of the projects that we have on our list, he would donate his artwork to them and you get to choose which one. These canvases are all parts of his work, his photography that he has done in Syria and in Iraq. He's very talented. He's a journalist here in DC, and I encourage everyone to support his art. Next, we have another artist that has also donated his work and also wanted us to go ahead and give them to people that donate or participate in our projects. And again, at $250 or more, you may choose one of our artist, Sargon Sade's photography on this side. Sadly, he was not able to make it tonight, but we still are very proud and impressed with his dedication to our nation. I want to encourage everyone to grab drinks and food that is laid out here in the front and enjoy yourselves. I do want to take a moment to thank AGN for recording tonight's evening's program, and also Assyrian TV from Sweden. They have been kind to donate their time, the quality of work that they do, and have spent their day with us. I want to take a moment to thank again Carmela Borashan, because with her dream, she made tonight possible. And with that, I want to take a moment and thank Juliana, because without Juliana Hamoud, Carmela's dream would not come to fruition. So I was just informed to let you know that the key to our success as a nonprofit organization is transparency. If you join us on AssyrianAid.org, you will see how the money you donate is spent. You will see what projects we work on and the ones we complete. I encourage you each to look at that website and become familiar with it. Last, I want to finish with the thought that I began with. Ask what you can do for your country. Ask what you can do for your people. I ask each and every one of you to think of how we can help our Assyrians in need in our homeland while we persevere here in America, where we are so lucky to be a part of the greatest nation. Thank you, everybody.